Great. Welcome everyone tonight. I'd like to call to order the June 22nd, 2023 meeting of the North Beach Planning Commission. We had essentially two items on the agenda tonight. One was the review of minutes from previous meetings. I would request that we table those until the next meeting till we have a full commission, and one of them isn't driving and having probably a little bit of difficulty with communication. So if that's okay with everybody, do we have to take a vote on that? I guess we.
Table the minutes until next available.
Okay with you?
Yeah, I move that we table the minutes from today's agenda until next meeting.
Bill, would you like to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. We will table those till the next meeting, which means we have one remaining item on the agenda. And that is the 8806 Erie Avenue. Maybe Rick, if we have a staff report from that, if people want to have a review, which is super helpful for us. But if you want to give us a quick readout on that, Rick, that would be great.
So about a year and a half ago, the applicants initially had planned on putting an addition on the side of the house, and there was a recommendation from this board to go to the Board of Appeals. And at that time, they decided they were not going to do the addition, and they were just going to do a dormer on the front. I approved the dormer in-house because it was small. It was very little additional square footage to the home. Since then, they've now decided to put a dormer on the back, which is going to give them a significantly larger bedroom on the second level without having to actually add an addition to the home. And so because of the amount of square footage it's at, it was brought back to the Planning Commission to review. I think it looks pretty nice. It's fits in well with the rest of the neighborhood where it sits at. The house is in the critical area designation, but because it's not actually adding any additional impervious ground, there's no water quality management plans needed. So it's pretty straightforward if you look at the project.
Okay.
Just
Great.
two gable dormers, one on the front and one directly on the rear.
Okay. So the drawings I see here are one on the, oh, okay, I see at the end here. That's right. So I assume the first set of drawings were the original ones, and then the second one and the additions on there. Yeah. Any questions from the commission?
I looked it over today. In fact, I got the drawing, I printed it out. I got it sitting right in front of me. No, I mean, it's a nice looking design. It's, I know the architect. So it looks good. And I remember this coming in an earlier package. So it's pretty thorough. So I didn't see any issues with it.
It's not changing the footprint of the property. It's not infringing
No,
anywhere.
it's,
What?
it's the front and rear dormer just to get some extra space on the second floor. So,
Basically what it does is the attic is very small. There's only a small section,
Yeah.
7-foot ceiling. And then so these dormers will extend that 7-foot height, 9-foot wide. And I don't remember exactly how far out they go, but
and you're adding a bathroom too, it looks like.
8 feet on the inside of each dormer, so it's a total of about 112 square feet addition.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you,
My mom.
I mean, when
Go
you
ahead.
look at the, sorry.
Go ahead, Bill.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, when you look at the framing plans on S101, you see how they're gonna do everything on the existing footprint, so. Again,
Yeah, I'm almost,
no disturbance.
I'm almost curious why this is coming to us. Is just the percentage of square feet that's being added?
because of the additional living space
Yeah.
being added.
Yeah. Okay.
So if it was just dormers that added windows with
Yeah.
no additional living space, we wouldn't
Okay.
bring it, but because it's gonna actually add another room to the home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just
Yeah,
out of
I
curiosity,
mean, there's some definite work, you know.
you're adding the second bathroom, right? Or is that already there? Okay, good. I think it looks nice. I think it's doing a lot to give you some extra square footage, so. Go ahead, Bill. Sorry, we interrupted you there.
Oh, no, I said I could see why we want to see it or come back through because, you know, the framing is, you know, it's not a huge building or anything, but, you know, the framing, you got to get that thought out. It looks like they did it, so.
Yeah. I am okay with this as well. So unless there's.
I
any-
just want to say that it is so refreshing to have something come in as beautiful as this. It takes the
Yeah.
original
Cottage and, yeah,
cottage and spiffs it up a little bit so that there's extra living space, but it still fits in with the character of the house and the houses around it. So awesome job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was our intent.
no, it's nice. It's nice. My mom used to have a house just like this over on 7th Street. And, yeah, it's really nice. So would anyone like to put forward a motion to approve, plans as presented?
I'll present a motion to go with the plans as presented. Can you guys hear me?
Very well.
Yes.
Okay.
Very well. We had a second here. All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Does the
Great.
county have everything else? So all they need is, they just need my stamp and stuff. Okay,
To get our branding
I will, we'll get a hold of them tomorrow sometime.
so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck. Good luck. So it looks like we have another,
So there's two documents there.
Mhm.
Bill, I apologize, and Celia. We have some documents here that we did not want to put on board docs. The attorneys have labeled them as personal and confidential and subject to attorney-client privilege, so we were told it's best just to print them and read them this way. But you'll understand as I go along and talk about them. So I guess the first one is not gonna be the one from the attorney letterhead. First one deal with the email. So if you remember, there was a project that was presented on Chesapeake Avenue for 3 apartments. And he wanted to do parking in the rear off of the alley. And the question was whether or not it had to have a commercial space. So
on
that was the first
on
question
Chesapeake or Bay?
on Chesapeake. Chesapeake Avenue, just past the hair salon on the left.
Ah, yeah. Sorry, I'm getting confused.
Yep,
So-
I remember it.
So once I got an answer to whether or not there had to be a commercial aspect to the building, it then presented other issues that we had to get from the attorney. So you can read through this before we leave, but basically what the attorney said is that the way the zoning ordinance is written, there is nothing that says in the commercial district that residential uses of any kind must have a commercial aspect. Part of that reasoning was in parentheses, it specifically says when developed as mixed use, residential above, commercial below. She also goes on to talk about there are other allowed uses that are residential that don't have any requirement for commercial. Single family, townhouses, duplexes are permitted.
Okay, even in the, so,
In the CM zone, so. The next issue came up is, so he's gonna bring it back to the planning commission, but now, when you look at the zoning ordinance. Under the CM zone, there is no front, rear, or side setbacks associated to residential properties in the CM zone. There is, however, a height restriction for residential in the CM zone, which was one of the other reasons she said kind of lends to the fact that residential is allowed without the commercial aspect. So
Okay.
basically, this project won't have to go to the Board of Appeals.
Okay, so it'll be conforming.
And so there's two options. And if you look at the second page, the one is you interpret the zoning ordinance as establishing setback requirements for residential in the CM zone, the same as the setbacks for commercial and mixed use with the 40-foot height restriction that's listed. Or you can interpret it to the lack of setback requirements for residential in the CM zone as requiring the planning commission to apply the average setback calculations that are set forth in section 5104, exceptions to lot sizes. My recommendation would be that you do the same as in 5104 to the exceptions, and you look at all the other residential properties that are on that street and whatever the average setbacks front, side, and rear for those are is what you would apply. This, although it's still questionable because now you're talking about multi-use, you're talking about multifamily, and there's no other multifamilies on Chesapeake Avenue other than the apartments across the street. Use setbacks are, you know, basically nothing. So.
I got a question. So the way the town's attorney has framed this, are we being asked to classify? I mean,
She's saying you have,
What-
she's basically saying you have two options. You can pick from either one of those, and either one of them are legally, would have a good legal standing because of the way our ordinance is written. And so there's no way we can change the ordinance prior to this project coming back before the planning commission. So these are the two legal options we have for their hearing. And then the recommendation is to fix those so that it's clear in the future. Because this is just, this is one of the first ones that's gonna happen in the CM zone, but, you know, over the next decade or so,
Okay.
there's gonna be plenty more.
So the builder coming in is going to request a permit after we designate? I guess I'm trying to find, I mean, normally, you know, we get the paperwork, they're requesting, a permit and they categorize themselves. So is this like a precursor to them coming in?
No, this project already
saying-
came before the planning commission.
Right?
You guys are, yeah, you guys already looked at this and the question was whether or not there had to be a commercial use. And so it was gonna go to the Board of Appeals. And I
Right?
said, well, let me ask the attorneys whether we're doing this the right way or not. And the attorney said,
Necessary, okay.
yeah,
Well,
So-
Rick, I have a question
So the
then.
attorney, go
Okay.
ahead.
Go ahead, Bill, if you're,
No,
okay, I
so-
have a question then.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, Bill, you want to go ahead?
It's easier for me to listen right now.
Okay, then I have a question, Rick, because we've been basically saying throughout in the commercial zone area that the bottom, the bottom floor, bottom half had needed to be residential, not I mean commercial, and the top being residential if they had to make some kind of alterations to the property. Right? I mean, I
Well,
don't understand.
we've only had one, well, we've had two. One of them that was presented, their intent was for it to be mixed use, the one on Bay Avenue. And then the only other one was the John Scott
That's
building
on
on Third Street.
Third Street. Yeah. I mean, that was the intent when, when we did the comprehensive plan, right? But it's come down to that the plan was not worded properly in the zoning or clarified enough.
It's just, yeah, there was just some loopholes in there. Like I said, it was just
Yeah.
a small thing left where it says if you do mixed use, this is what it has to be. And so the attorney is saying from a legal standpoint, if is not must, it's if, it's your choice.
Yeah,
So their recommendation is if the intent was to, over time, have the commercial district be all residential above and commercial below, that
Yeah.
we need to make those changes and then send it to the council so that we can have an amendment done.
yeah. So as it is, Celia, we're left with two options for essentially interpreting what's written. Right,
Okay,
right. So it's almost kind of like a stopgap, I guess, until,
Well,
Yeah.
and realistically, the good thing is the project that he presented, he's not asking for like zero setbacks. You know, his Board of Appeals, he was gonna ask for, I think, you know, the 3-foot setbacks. He was gonna ask for something that was fairly reasonable to begin with, so I think you could probably pick either one of these. And the site plan would still fit.
wasn't
Yes.
one of the
Yes.
one of the concerns being the parking, that they didn't really have parking to accommodate the 3 condos or the 3 apartments?
Well, so that's another issue, is that in the CM district, there is no requirement for parking for anything. The parking requirement for residential properties is only specific to R1, R2, and W1. There is no parking requirement in the CM zone. It is all determined at site plan.
But it's
I
not
think
gonna
if
be a
we're-
commercial building, it's gonna be a residential building, mixed use.
Doesn't matter.
Wow, yeah, we're gonna address this and get this worded correctly, right?
but in truth, it depends how urgent we feel this is. And the normal process, we go through the comprehensive plan, integrate the comprehensive plan into the zoning, but that may be 12, 18 months or something, right?
What they're saying is that if the intent was for this not to be what it actually is, and
Yes.
the intent was to kind of force the upper level residential multi-use
Yeah,
so that you had more affordable housing.
Yep.
You know, because usually condos, apartments are more affordable than single family or townhouses. And then to improve the commercial district as well, then she recommends not waiting and just fixing these specific things and then doing a comprehensive review of the zoning ordinance when we get closer to the end. But
Yeah.
she doesn't feel that there's any reason not to fix the things if the intent is not conveyed correctly.
yeah. I mean, I can give you the intent when it was done, and that intent may be different now. We have different planning commission, different town council and so forth. But the intent when it was done was that in the town center, the commercial area, was to foster commercial and retail businesses at the ground level. And maybe you have whole office buildings, or maybe you have mixed use above, maybe you have apartments, maybe you have condos. But the idea was to encourage commercial at the street level in the commercial district.
And like I said, and the other big thing, like even if you look at the survey, affordable housing has been a huge thing.
Yeah.
And majority of the ways, whether it's cities, towns, small towns,
Yeah.
rural areas, that they address that is usually with apartments.
Yeah.
Or condos, because they're smaller, they accommodate more people and
Yeah.
they cost less, so.
Yeah. And to encourage just young people in general to stay in places where they can have 1 and 2 bedrooms apartments. So all of that was kind of the reasoning for that. So it was I can tell you, it was definitely the intent to have that there. But as I said, different planning commission now, somewhat of a different town council. You know, I can't say that was a unanimous kind of feeling with everybody at the time. There was a majority, but not a consensus on that. So I don't know where it would sit now. So is there an option for just rewording that as it is, or it sounds like we need to decide on this
This
now? This has to be decided.
And luckily, this project is a multifamily, but And so, and the other thing the attorney said was, so if he was gonna do a townhouse, he wouldn't have to ask for anything.
Yeah.
It's fully
Wow.
permitted.
Yeah,
So what's the difference of 2 townhouses? Or if he just decides to word it differently and to say, I'm gonna do 2 townhouses with an apartment attached to one.
Yeah.
It would be fully permitted.
Yeah.
So
So-
their reasoning for the way they looked at all the different angles, once they explained it, made sense.
okay. So for today,
Today, I just
We
wanted
need to decide on what it- yeah.
Suggestion is we try and do a work session where we can discuss just fixing this issue and then the other issue that was brought up by the Board of Appeals member.
okay,
Um,
so I'm fine to go over that. So it sounds like we don't need a decision on this today, but maybe to set up a work session to discuss it. I mean, at first glance, yeah, I don't know if I even have a preference for this because I don't know if it's gonna make a difference. If we're gonna actually change the language in this to convey its original intent, then maybe this development is the only one that's going to really
That would-
have this applied to it,
Correct.
right?
And
So,
if you look at both of the 2 options, realistically, the second option where you determine doesn't say how you determine it other than the averages, right?
yeah,
And so if you look at the averages that are on Chesapeake Avenue and you compare them to what the setbacks are for commercial use
yeah,
that you would use, they're almost identical.
yeah,
It's almost the same, because almost all of your houses on Chesapeake Avenue are on 25 or 35-foot wide lots, so the setbacks aren't 8 foot on any of them.
yeah,
They're all 5 foot or 3.5 foot.
Yeah.
So the setbacks that apply to commercial would fit. So either one of those would basically give you the same site plan.
okay. Okay, good. Well, last question for me is just out of curiosity, what do you think they're gonna do with the parking
So I have.
or
agreed-
not do with the parking?
He had several sets of designs drawn up, looking at parking in the front and parking in the rear.
Yeah,
And he kind of agreed with the planning commission that the street look with the 2 or 4 spaces in the
Yeah.
front was really kind of off because you have to push the building back so far
yeah,
and it kind of it looks way out of place. And so he's trying to work out the deal with the gentleman that owns the other lot.
yeah,
And that gentleman called me today and wants to know if I'll set up a meeting between him and the other gentleman to try and work out how that would work and what kind of unforeseen things could happen to his lot down the road.
yeah,
So I told him, I said, but he has to keep in mind, if he's gonna build a house on that lot, he's gonna have to provide off-street parking as well. And so if he does his parking access from the rear, that 20-foot easement won't affect him at all. Both
Yeah.
just access that one area for parking on both
Yeah.
properties, so.
good. I hope that works out. I think that would be much nicer than having, 3 or 4
Yeah,
cars.
the
parked.
picture of the one pushed back 30 feet it was odd, it looked odd.
Okay, great.
So the other document, Board of Appeals member had issues with, approving vacation rentals because one of the recommendations for special exceptions for vacation rentals says that all applicants must maintain a minimum of 2 town parking passes. The issue is town doesn't issue parking passes any longer. And so the Board of Appeals member felt that the town was forcing him to break the law by passing these
When they
or
didn't
by
exist.
approving these
Yeah.
when that was a condition. So I gave an interpretation of what I thought the zoning ordinance meant. He didn't agree with it. He didn't agree with me being the one to interpret the zoning ordinance.
Okay,
So that was sent to the attorney as well, and it's long-winded, but there's some other things that we're gonna need to fix in the zoning ordinance to correct that.
Okay.
Her recommendation is, one, they're not breaking the law by approving an application for a vacation rental because the town can't, we can't pass an ordinance and then not provide what they need for the ordinance in order to deny someone. So, you know, if you want to build a fence, we can't say all your fences have to be made out of titanium or you can't build them. Like it's impossible to meet that standard. So because we don't issue the parking passes, the applicant can't meet the standard. The Board of Appeals legally cannot deny the applicant because of something that we are no longer doing.
Yeah.
So
That makes sense.
so they'll be able to fix that, but in the meantime, the attorney says you should also, when you're looking at the other part of the ordinance, just remove the mandate for the parking passes.
Okay.
And one of those reasons was there was no administrative way or list in the zoning ordinance on how we even manage parking passes. There was nothing that says whether they had to be a physical pass.
Yeah.
There was nothing that listed what was required to be able to legally get a pass.
Yeah.
There was no rules or regulations on how the passes were to be used, whether you had to put them in your car, whether the tenants even had to use them, or they didn't use them. So her recommendation is just get rid of it. So, and then the other part is doesn't really have to do with you guys. I think that part is clean, but so as a Board of Appeals or as a planning commission, if you had an issue with a project, you couldn't present it to us or ask for interpretation or the attorney to get involved as a citizen. It's something you are handling as part of the commission. You can't do it alone. You need to get the commission to say, hey, as a whole, we would like some clarification on this. And part of that reason was the Board of Appeals, if I give a written interpretation and someone disagrees with that, it then goes to the Board of Appeals for them to determine.
Yeah.
So if you have a single person on the Board of Appeals asking for interpretation, they don't agree with it, it goes back to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she's saying, no, they need to, as a whole, put a document together or discuss it amongst themselves. And if the rest of the board decides, no, we disagree with you, then it's, the status quo stays as it is. But so it's just language that needs to be cleaned up so that there's no gray areas. And so I just think I think one work session, I don't think it should take us more than an hour to figure out the wording and make the recommendation for the council.
Okay. I'm wondering if we should do like a back-to-back work session with the next meeting, or just do it separately, or maybe we need these documents too. I was gonna say maybe do it remotely too to make it easier for folks. Yeah. I'm trying to think, is there anything like pressing on this, like in terms of time? Because this.
No, the
right.
Board of Appeals one is easy. I can send them a letter from my office outlining what the attorney said and that they're good.
Yeah.
And I mean, we don't necessarily have to get the ordinance changed before the next planning commission, because that project, like I said, is gonna come before you long before we would have a chance to change anything. But the sooner the better, so I think the sooner we can do an hour.
Yeah. I mean, I'm tempted to piggyback with the next meeting, but you never know how much is gonna come up on the agenda, right?
I think I've already got 3 items.
Probably better to do it separately.
You're not changing clerical error, errors, you're changing.
Yes, as I said, the sooner.
Thursday, Friday.
And then just post. Then we just post the document and just take it down. Or is there a way we can post it in a private area where nobody else can see it, or? Okay.
mean,
Because when we printed them tonight, so,
We're talking about that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was talking about the parking document.
no. And so then it's just the board. Okay,
okay.
that's, I'm good with that.
Yeah, maybe we do that.
That works for me.
Yeah, why don't we do that? That sounds good. And what's the tipping point that takes it from clarification to, do you know what I mean? Because it could be as small as like one word instead of like making this.
So this
if-
one would have been just a clerical change.
Yeah,
Parentheses where it says if mixed use was left in there and was supposed to come out.
yeah,
But because in Article 5, where it talks about the setbacks and everything else, it was very specific that it left a single height requirement in the CM zone for residential.
Yeah.
That the intent was commercial, and you allowed duplexes and townhouses with no conditions. So there was multiple. If it was just one thing,
yeah,
could have done in clerical, but when you look at the total of the 2 or 3 different chapters, the intent looks like was to allow what we're doing right now. So
Yeah.
to change that, we need to go through that process with the public hearings and then the reading, and even after the public hearings, 2 months after that, right? Because they have to introduce it, and then
I mean, I feel like we should, because I feel like that was the intent, and I'm happy when intents change. You know what I mean? Like, and the whatever, but that was the intent when it was done incorrectly. So
Yeah.
just to, I feel it's our responsibility to put that in. If in a comprehensive plan people have different view on, then so be it. Moving forward.
and we also did put money in for in the budget so that we can hire a consultant when this other project is done. Well, and to update the zoning ordinance too, so we'll be able to hire a consultant to help with that as well, which should help move it along. Plus, to
Yeah.
catch little things that, we've all looked at these things so many times. You miss it, like, until he brought up the thing where it said if.
Yeah.
I read that chapter 1,000 times and I never saw.
Yeah.
If mixed use.
Yeah.
I've seen it so many times, I just ignored it. So. I think
Okay.
we need something to help.
Maybe we plan for like an hour and a half or something, because we'll have these
Yep.
2 to do, and then to look at the other one. But that sounds good.
That sounds about right.
Good.
It's important to get it done.
I think so too. Any other business?
Yeah, no, I didn't have no updates on the comp plan. He's still working on the second
Okay.
2 other chapters, so once he finishes those, we don't have and we won't have the rest of the thing that Dawn put out where she did the.
I put results and some results in the
Okay.
May meeting, under the comp plan survey. The survey's still open,
Okay,
so until we decide that you're definitely ready for it to close.
Yeah.
We'll put everything in the nice, pretty
okay.
package.
Any idea of the numbers, or are people?
It's at 100.
Yeah.
I already put it, submitted it on the North Beach Boardwalk.
Yeah.
Pretty much the same wording. And why we want it done, and then I also put it out on Nextdoor.
Dawn put it out in, what do you call it? Geo, where it's just North Beach. It didn't go out past that.
Geolocation. Out through text notification.
Okay.
So it was only the North
If you
Residents
were
got it.
subscribed to
Yeah,
text messaging.
Yeah,
Now,
to the town, you got it.
you got it.
Okay. Cool, good, good. Nice, 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 nice.
Go to like, let the president-
Fantastic. If there's no other business, would someone like to close the meeting? Make a motion to close the meeting? Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? All right. Good night, everyone.
Aye.
Good chat. We'll see you.